So just to introduce myself, my name is Darshi. It's short for Priyadarshi Bhattacharya, which is confusing on too many terms. My parents were obviously didn't like me too much when I was born. Said, "How can we make this guy's life different?" So decided let's keep his name as Priyadarshi. So that's confusing on too many ends. So Darshi it is. I head HR for DBS Asia Hub, world's best digital bank. So we'll talk a lot more about that as we go along. Um, Today, what we're going to do is I'm going to invite some colleagues of mine to the stage, and we're going to talk about the future of hiring and what are we doing in our current organizations to kind of address this. Okay. All right. I'm going to call in T.S. Mohan. Um, Mohan, if you can join me on stage, please. So Mohan has 21 years of HR experience across industry segments, with experiential knowledge in dealing with different situations and cultures, moreover practicing different approaches for different geographies and cultural expectations. Mohan's expertise includes talent acquisition, compensation management, performance management, employee engagement, industrial relations, rebadging, and OD interventions. He works with Tata BSS, and before that, he was associated with prominent MNCs in various roles. He's handled global streams, including HR operations, workforce administration, learning, leadership development, and talent. His management statement is never say die. Thanks, Mohan. I'd also like to call upon Harish Navuluru, who's AVP Human Resources for ArthaYantra, the world's only full services robo-advisor. He has been part of the core team at ArthaYantra since 5 years and has played vital roles in leading ArthaYantra from a fledgling fintech startup to be recognized as one of the most innovative technology companies in the world. From being a red herring global top 100 winner to being selected as a cool vendor by Gartner, ArthaYantra has over 150,000 registered users from 700 locations in India, apart from 30 countries in just over a little over 5 years, making it the largest financial advisor in India. Over a career spanning 22 years, Harish has been associated with global firms like Deloitte and ADP and helped them in their early stage growth in India. And I would also like to call you back on stage, please, so we can talk a little more about the wonderful world of analytics, Shankar, that you have kind of worked on. So I think if you ask any businesses about its top challenges, the odds are good that recruiting and retaining talent are somewhere on that list. Smart companies know that they are only as good as the best workers and will prioritize seeking out the best of the best for their organizations. According to the Boston Consulting Group, of every HR practice, recruitment processes have the most significant impact on revenue. Companies that effectively recruit the best candidates exhibit 3.5x the revenue growth of competitors that poorly manage their recruitment efforts. In order to kind of talk about the various facets of talent acquisition, we're going to break the conversation and the panel discussion over broadly 6 different topics covering the entire recruitment life cycle. So we're going to talk about candidate sourcing. We're going to talk about interview and fitment and the candidate experience and how that makes a difference. We're going to talk about candidate to employee, the journey. There's a big gap, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, at times more than that. How do you keep the candidate engaged? We're going to talk about onboarding. We're going to talk about the need for diversity. And finally, we're going to talk about big data and recruiting and the future. So as technology continues to evolve, it plays an increasingly important role in the way companies approach the talent search and the hiring process. And I think Nathan spoke about this earlier, that the more and more we have millennial workforce joining our careers, joining their careers in our organizations, recruiters have learned that these employees' expectations from the hiring process is fairly different. And that includes the way that they work after they become employees as well. So my first question is to Shankar. You were talking about this in a lot more detail in your previous presentation. Now, particular to sourcing, the way you source candidates and bring them into the organization, are there any key bits of advancement that you've made in the world of analytics to kind of bring this to life?
Sure. So I touched on it in the earlier talk as well. So for us, sourcing there are like 2, 3 different types of it, right? One is uh, where you're looking for roles where there's ample amount of data that we have collected already. So we are trying to do this bit of what we call the resume modeling. I don't know what the industry calls it, but essentially it is a way of screening resumes using your bank that's available and trying to look for intelligent matching, basically based on a job description. Try to look for what will be the best fit candidate. And we have third-party organizations also who have pitched to us. And in fact, our sister company in India, which is the Fidelity International, is already tied up with a vendor who does this for them. We are trying to do it more in-house, and we are trying to build the capability. But having said that, it takes time, so we are not there yet. We are also doing a lot on social media. So digital and social media is a key play in terms of how you source for talent. So right from having a presence on LinkedIn, including building an app, which is going to be launched soon, where we can engage with prospective candidates and keep them engaged post and offer stage. So these are different initiatives that are happening in terms of how we could source talent differently. So that's what I would say in terms of what we are doing innovatively.
I think, Harish, I think when we were speaking yesterday, you also mentioned about a few things that you're doing in a startup environment, which is slightly different than a lot of us sitting in this room. So can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who don't know ArthaYantra, I don't expect everyone to know ArthaYantra because we're a startup, very proudly startup. So it's always a challenge when you hire for a startup, because the talent pool that you call up someone, you say if you're calling from Google, Microsoft, or like the big guns, they're always ready to work. They don't want even to look at the job description. But if you have a very fantastic job role also, but if they don't resonate with your company's name, it becomes very difficult for them to relate to your company. So hiring for a startup is very, very challenging. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect is we sift through, because we have very limited resources being in a startup, very few people, and each person actually practically does at least 3 or 4 people's jobs in a startup. And that's the reality on the startup side. So what happens is you don't have resources, you have always time constraints, there are always budgetary constraints. So you have to work with all of them together. So what we have decided last 2 years back, we actually looked at all our, my friend was going through a lot of analytics. We did a lot of those analytics internally and decided that we saw that we're losing a lot of time. And for a startup, time is the most important factor, because if I need somebody onboarded in the next 1 week, I need to have that resource onboarded in the next 1 week. There's no two ways about it. I can't slip on my commitment. So what we decided was, when we are going the traditional way of hiring, the conventional way of hiring, what was happening was we were sifting through hundreds and thousands of resumes, and it's the same funnel that we were going through. What we decided, we introduced something called as a top grading interviewing process. This is a new process where you start right from attracting the talent to hiring them. What it means is you get rid of all your job descriptions. So being a startup, if we have that liberty to actually take these drastic decisions, like when Nathan sir was also speaking, it's very difficult to make an elephant dance, right? So it's the same way. We were able to take that decision because we were fairly lean and young at that stage. We were hardly like a 35 member company. So what you do is you take out your job descriptions. You look at the job description, it's only English. I'm looking at smart, confident persons, all these things. We take that completely out of your job descriptions. If you look at the real life scenario, when a person joins your organization, how do you measure them? How do you do the performance evaluation? There are KPIs. There are numbers on which you judge people. So what you do in top grading is you take those numbers that you want this for particular role, you put it into something called as a job scorecard. And that is what you send it outside into the market. So what happens is, if, for example, if I'm hiring for a sales role, maybe a corporate sales role, I say that, I'm looking at someone who has done an annual revenue generation of 5 crores. Someone who has done 1 crore will probably not hit that apply button. So what it means is I go through lesser number of CVs. I go through only the A players, because A player is the top 10 percentile of the workforce in the entire talent pool. So I go in top grading, you typically hire only the top 10 percentile. We call them as A players. So that's what we have done.
So I think if I'm to possibly add one more experience that we've had at DBS, and I can talk about that in a little detail, which is essentially when we started off our process about a year back when we set up our operations here in Hyderabad. What we were facing as a unique challenge is we were being dumped with a fair load of CVs that quite often were in hundreds and thousands. We're about 650 people as of today, but here's the best part. In order to reach those 650 people today, we have touched approximately 13,000 unique CVs. And 13,000 unique CVs are essentially only the people who expressed a willingness to be considered for an interview at DBS. This is not considering the people that we spoke to and said, you know what, doesn't interest me. Now, in the longer scheme of things, what we have done very well, and a lot of credit goes to my friend Deepak somewhere there in the audience, who's kind of ensured that we've captured every bit of structured data that we can about the candidate. The second bit that we have done is that we've worked very closely with our data scientists in the organization who had actually been hired to do something very different, very similar to the kind of work that they're doing at Fidelity, and essentially brought that together to sift through structured and unstructured data of those 13,000 odd CVs that we're talking about and arrive at what is that particular persona of the person who's most likely to clear our interview. That gives the recruitment function a much better understanding of where can we really go into the market and what kind of person are we really looking for. I think phase 2 to this possibly could be this persona is most likely to succeed in clearing an interview. Is this persona most likely to succeed at a job in DBS in the long run? We're not sure about that. Maybe we don't have the data to sift through and kind of bring out the analytics on that yet. We'll need some time on that, but that's one area that we have already worked on. I think Harish, you spoke about, and Mohan, you also spoke about the need for social media becoming more and more strong. And I think we all agree that ignore social media at your own peril. So anything that's happening, Mohan, in your organization to kind of look at social media and how can you really derive the best out of it to attract and hire the best talent?
Sure, Darshi. If I had to extend that conversation a slightly bit, a technology cannot replace common sense. 90% of our recruitment job is commonsensical. Technology is an enabler. So there is no way that a recruiter can be replaced by technology. I just wanted to assure you guys first. Yeah. Second piece is, when we look at social media, very loose definition of social media is a Facebook or a LinkedIn or a Twitter or a one-on-one connect. In a true sense, social media has evolved or has been there for ages in our Indian society, if not anywhere else. If you go to the rural space or suburban spaces, the social media is a connect among the social groups where the news spreads like fire. A message gets connected very fast. Tata BSS, we are present in 27 locations in India. 17 of them are rural. There is no Facebook available there. There is no LinkedIn available there. We use social media called the village groups where we hire from. It's word of mouth gets spread. A proactive sourcing takes place there. Today we are sitting on a potential of around 5,000 people ready to work with us, given an opportunity, ready with selected resources. Likewise, when it comes to urban, that's where the commonsensical piece comes in. Most of my recruitment managers are already into the identical groups in the social media. They post it, there is no, like Nathan said earlier, the entire advertisement is gone out of the space. No more advertisement for hiring. Recruitment managers makes their own collaterals, take it into their social media groups, they post it. There's not even a CV. A like gets generated and a like gets connected and a person gets spoken to and an offer has been made. And I'm sharing with Darshi earlier, our offer to join ratio is 87. and source to hire is 12%. So the medias which we are using is exceptionally successful, and we've been very happy, and we'll continue to explore that piece. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks, Mohan. Harish, you also mentioned yesterday while we were having a chat around a unique way of using social media to look at a candidate's background. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
Sure, you want me to share that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting concept.
Is it working? Okay. So, well, we don't use social media to hire very proactively. Yeah, of course, we do use it sometimes. Occasionally, we do, like Mohan mentioned, that we do post it on our timelines. Most of our HR folks also do that. And we have fairly been successful. I wouldn't say it's working really well. Data is too small because our headcount itself is 100. So I wouldn't want to make big, tall claims on that. But we have realized one thing: when we, make an offer, where a candidate is shortlisted for an offer, and an offer is being discussed, at the documentation stage, I mean, I'm assuming when we get the pay slips and all with us, before we verify all that, what we do is we do something called as a social media profiling. So we check the person's Facebook, LinkedIn's, Twitter's, Instagrams, not necessarily for, like we were saying, not necessarily for political views. We're politically neutral as an organization. But we would look for traits where it might defeat the purpose of hiring the person for a specific job. Because we are into financial services organization, we are into financial services. So integrity, ethics happen to be of paramount importance. Zero tolerance policies. So social media is a very there's maybe a place where someone has just gone and wrote some derogatory remark about somebody, and that person is a no-no for us, because you never know when it will come back and bite you as an organization. So particularly when we are growing and we are at the scale-up stage, we cannot afford to make those mistakes. So we use social media for background verifications. That's what we do.
Thanks, Harish. I think the other element that Nathan had very nicely spoken about is that today, more and more, be it because of social media or otherwise, I don't think there was the old world concept of looking at the candidate experience, and the thought was we are the ones giving a job as the organization. The candidate is the one looking for the job. Do I really need to care about what the candidate really feels like? Now, thanks to social media and thanks to websites like Glassdoor, everything that you do in your current organization in the candidate experience arena is right out there for anybody to read and interpret in any way that you see. The other key interesting thing that Nathan had also spoken about is the fact that the people who get rejected quite often are just as much your brand ambassadors as the guys who get selected. And hence, candidate experience becomes of absolute paramount importance. So my question back to maybe to Harish and to Mohan as well is, are there any unique things that you're doing in your organization, especially in a startup scenario? How do you kind of make that experience a really wholesome and joyful one?
Well, that, like I already mentioned, that one